Hey, welcome into another edition of Spitting Loogs with the ESPN's Tom Luginbill. I'm Lance Taylor from the Next Round. It is brought to you by our friends at mybookie.ag. Remember, go to use that promo code Next Round. You're going to secure a first deposit bonus at mybookie.ag, where you can play the NBA, college basketball, the bowl season coming up, the NFL, everything right there at mybookie.ag. So I know you haven't been asked this yet, but did the committee get it right?
I think deep down they did get it right, but I still find there to be something fundamentally wrong with how we got here. There's just something in my being that tells me that no matter the circumstances, if you are a Power 5 conference champ and you're undefeated, you can't be left out. And I understand you can't fit everybody in. And I also understand the language of the best four teams. And I bet you if they could go back to the beginning of the college football playoff, they probably would have avoided that language a little bit, because all it does is open the door for the discussion about the eye test and the analytics and were you a one-loss team or a zero-loss team, and did you win your conference championship or not? And it's unfortunate. Like, I really, really feel for Florida State, and I've said this all week long. This isn't an Alabama problem. If Georgia beats Alabama, this exact same discussion is happening in the room with the committee. It's just Florida State and Texas. That's all it is.
And I was going to ask you, like I've said the last couple of days, I truly believe if Georgia beats Bama, Florida State's in, Texas is out. But because Alabama, lasting impression, best win of the college football season, SEC champions, they had to have a drafting partner with Texas. Like, Bama wasn't getting in without Texas, but I think it would have been an easy argument, or easier argument, as well as Texas is playing, to say undefeated Michigan, undefeated Georgia, undefeated Washington, undefeated Florida State.
Yeah. Oh, I don't think there's any question. And you mentioned something that I think is really important there, and that is the freshness and the visuals and having been burnt in everybody's mind what we watched this weekend. And imagine that being the lasting impression. And it was strong. It was strong in Charlotte on Saturday night. It was strong in Arlington, Texas on Saturday afternoon. And it was certainly strong in Atlanta. And it carries over. Like, you go into that room the next morning and you're on that committee, like, you're telling me that your reaction towards looking at those teams and the body of work as a whole wouldn't be different from a mindset standpoint if you did it 2 weeks from now versus the very next morning. I just don't think you can avoid that human nature. That's how you're going to react. That's how we're all going to react, you know? Yeah. And so I do think that plays a role, fair or unfair. Like, you're like, whoa, it's kind of like when a kid takes an official visit and he gets home on Sunday night, and the very next day he wants to commit to that school. Or that night he comes home, he's like, wow, this place is awesome. And you want to tell him, listen, take a deep breath, go to sleep tonight, go to school tomorrow, get a good night's sleep tomorrow night, and let's take it through a little decompression period. Then we'll think through everything and we'll go through all the parameters, right? But the committee doesn't do that. They don't have the opportunity to do that. It's right in the room for the final decision to decide it all. Now, whether they got it right or wrong, Lance, I will give them credit for doing the hard thing. Like, they had to know the gravity and the weight of what they were about to do and what they decided to do once that became public, and the backlash that was going to come.
Yeah, look, I know they will blame it on SEC politics, heaviest stick gets their way, all that sort of stuff. But I think most people, when you watch the games, and I'll bring up 2 points. If the committee would have said, hey, look, it is too tight, we just can't leave both out, we're going to have a play-in game between Alabama and Florida State, I think Alabama would have said, we'll take that, and we'll take our probably 15, 16, 17-point favorites. We'll run you off the field, and then we'll go on to the college football playoff. And on the other side, and this could have been one of the factors for the committee. If you ask Jim Harbaugh, okay, you're 1, Washington's 2, Texas is 3, in that 4 slot, you can play Alabama, you can play Ohio State, Georgia, or Florida State. All day long, they would have said, give us Florida State.
Yeah. There's no question. Did you see the reaction in the room when it was announced too? They were seeing
one guy was like, what the heck? You know, he's looking at her like, what the hell are we've been number 1 pretty much all year, and we got to play Alabama?
I know. And look at in another part of this conversation, I don't think it's spoken about enough. I mean, it's because that everybody's in angst over the Florida State Alabama decision. Is we just took Georgia and put them from 1 to 6.
Crazy.
Are you going to sit there and tell me they're not one of the top 4 teams in the country? You're going to sit there and tell me if you pulled every single coach that had to play against them and said, "Hey, publicly, we need to know where you think this team is," what they would say? I mean,
let me ask you, what would be your right now if they were like, "Hey, look, we don't care about anything that has happened right now. The 4 best teams in college football, you give me the 4 best 1 through 4."
They probably, in this particular situation, because there was a head-to-head, they would have taken Texas and Georgia. If you just went for, but you're assuming that you're saying that Alabama won.
Yeah, I'm saying Alabama won, but right now, if yourself, Tom Luginbill, you've got to put your 4 best teams in right now.
Michigan, Texas, Alabama, Georgia.
Yeah. Yeah, those are I think I tweeted that out. Those are the best 4 teams. And then I tweeted out what I thought the matchups would be, and they ultimately ended up being that. There were a lot of people that believed they were going to make it Washington and Michigan this last Big Ten Pac-12 Rose Bowl. I didn't see that. I think Washington did enough to go undefeated in a really good Pac-12 this year to get that number 2. I don't think they deserved Washington. I think the matchups are fantastic. I said this just a little bit ago. This is the first time I can ever remember going into a playoff where I was like, I think all 4 teams can win the national championship. People are going to discount Washington all they want, but this team knows how to win tight games.
Yeah, no question. And they are conditioned to win 1-possession games. That's how you live in the Pac-12, right? If you can do it there, you can do it anywhere. To your point, not only are there all 4 teams could win it, I think there's 6 teams that could win it. And unfortunately, that's just the year that we're living in. I mean, if we're really looking at the top 4 teams, like we just said, you'd have Georgia, Alabama, Texas, and Michigan, whatever order you want to put in. And there's no way the committee could justify doing it. Even if they believe it, they can't justify doing it, which is why they should have stayed away from that language from the very beginning.
Yeah, best team. You're right. It's Spitting Loogs with ESPN's Tom Luginbill on Disrupt the Media. Like, subscribe, give us that thumbs up. It is brought to you by our friends at Manscaped. Go to manscaped.com. Great stocking stuffers here for the man in your life. Put in that promo code Loogs, Loogs, and they're going to hook you up at checkout. That is at manscaped.com. So now the portal's open, and it seems like every time I pull the computer up or I look at the phone, somebody's rolling a new name.
I know.
And I'm not really surprised on Cam Ward because I did hear last week that he had multiple 7-figure offers already. My prediction is he ends up going to Ohio State. I think some people were surprised that Kyle McCord is in the portal. To me,
Sure.
And this is just pure speculation, it seems like there was a hard conversation with Ryan Day and Kyle McCord. We've got X-player coming in. Again, I think it's Cam Ward. And I'll give you an opportunity to compete with him. He is going to be the favorite coming in, though. And thank you for all the hard work you've given us. Thank you for the commitment. But if you want to go on to, a better opportunity, so be it. That's what I take from the Kyle McCord. I don't know how you feel about that. I think he's a pretty good quarterback, but the problem is, much like Jalen Milroe earlier this year, Lugs, he is getting compared to the C.J. Strouds and the Dwayne Haskins and the Justin Fields.
Yeah, he is. And listen, I think a little bit of this too, if you're him, you probably feel underappreciated. I mean, look at the scrutiny. Like, all he did was win. And every single weekend, it's never good enough. And he actually played really well more often than not, especially for a young first-time player. And so, he probably feels slighted a little bit. But I think you're right. I think he feels like he's the starting quarterback there, and he should be treated as such. And if they're going to go out and credit Ryan Day, if he has a man-to-man conversation, brings him in and says, listen, this is what we're thinking about doing. And obviously there must be some validity to it because there's no way he would have that conversation with Kyle McCord, because the decision, if it happens, is going to impact this next week. Like you're gonna know when you're going into the Cotton Bowl. So you have to have the conversation. And so I think you're dead on there. Where he would go, I don't know. He's played good football. He's played at a very, very high level. I think, with everybody in the transfer portal, you really got to do your homework. You got to figure out why they are in there, how much have they actually played, can they be evaluated at the collegiate level, do they fit like what we're doing? Because the one thing about the transfer portal. And I've talked to a lot of coaches, obviously, over the years about this, but this conversation was had maybe this fall more than ever, and that is, we're not all that interested in guys who have been in the transfer portal for less than 2 years that haven't played. Like, we're better off going and identifying a guy that we think is going to be really good for us through the recruiting process, and then we're going to bring that player in, we're going to develop him, and then we'll work the transfer portal with guys that have played football, meaningful snaps, in big games, and we know a little bit more about them. And that's the conversation I'm hearing more and more. So, like, there's going to be a lot of people that will go into that transfer portal that aren't going to have a landing spot.
Well, let me throw some out at you real quick. And by the way, this is Spitting Loogs with ESPN's Tom Luginbill. Disrupt the Media. Like, subscribe, give us a thumbs up. Grayson McCall's got a ton of experience. Cam Ward, a ton of experience. Riley Leonard, a lot of experience. Dylan Gabriel, a ton of experience. Dante Moore, a little bit of experience this year. Who am I leaving out? Kyle McCord.
Well, Cam Ward.
Yeah, Cam Ward. Okay, so let's take two different systems. Hugh Freeze at Auburn needs quarterback. Lincoln Riley. Malachi Nelson, I don't know. You watch the kid. I really limited snaps. Miller Moss was the backup this year, so I don't know. But if you had to take one of these guys to play for Lincoln Riley and one to play for Hugh Freeze, guys that are available, where would you go?
Wow. I think for Hugh Freeze, Grayson McCall would be a very interesting selection there, just because of the athleticism, having been heavily involved in option-oriented type of stuff in the run game, quarterback run game. He just seems to kind of make some sense there. I know that there were some, initial talks last year with that one, as it related to him. That one would make some sense to me. I think that SC has got to be very, very careful, because it's going to be harder and harder for Lincoln Riley to sign high school quarterbacks if they continually sign a high school quarterback and then go into the portal to replace them. And so, unless he's absolutely missed, and what he inherited with Miller Moss and then what they signed last year with Malachi Nelson, you'd probably say it's Dante Moore. Right across the city.
I mean, he seems like
away.
He seems like he'd be a really good fit.
I think that one hit Chip Kelly hard, man. I really think he felt Ethan Garbers would be the one going into the transfer portal. And so he might have been blindsided by that one a little bit. And keep in mind, too, a lot of this stuff, there's a lot of rumblings out there, especially with the younger players, as it relates to name, image, and likeness, that were either promised or provided for initially to get that hook in them. And then all of a sudden, everything they were told didn't actually happen. And so now they're disgruntled, or they're looking for another outlet or another place. That stuff's very real, and it is happening.
If Cam Ward, if I am right about this, if he does end up in Columbus, how does he fit in Ryan Day's offense?
Oh, he'd be much more of a, Braxton Miller, Justin Fields, type of player in relationship to the athleticism. Yeah. Well, yeah, it's probably close to CJ there. I think that's pretty fair. He's really accomplished. I mean, he's played just about every level you can play at, and he's played at a very high level. He does have some turnover issues at times, but he's your prototypical spread air raid guy that is athletic. It's what everybody's looking for right now.
So are there any other names? I mean, we always talk quarterbacks, but have you seen any interesting names that are like difference makers that can come in and play for major Power 5 programs right now?
Well, I think Riley Leonard can play for just about anybody. I think that he is going to be a very high-profile guy because of the character, the background, the student-athlete part of it. He's got tremendous upside and a high ceiling. He hasn't even scratched the surface of what he's going to be capable of. He's got to stay healthy, though. I mean, that's the other dynamic on all of this is you've got to research a guy's history and his background as it relates to injury. Are you going to be inheriting that? And is that guy going to have the same thing happen to him over and over and over again? And we've seen that with quarterbacks. I think the other thing too is, we heard Matt Rule talk about, what it may cost in the market now to be in the market for, a high level quarterback, $1 million, $1.5 million, $2 million, whatever. My pushback on that, and my question was, how many of those guys in the market have actually played like $1 million at the place they were at before. And if they did, then maybe they wouldn't be in the portal. All right. So maybe the market's skewed. That may be the numbers that people are throwing out there, but you're going to pay a guy that much money. He better be getting you to a New Year's Six bowl game.
Yeah, well, look, Dylan Gabriel, I've been a fan of his since way back UCF days, and he looked to be back to that form this year under Brent Venables at Oklahoma, and Jeff Lebby was obviously his offensive coordinator, who's now in Mississippi State. I find it hard to believe, though, Dylan Gabriel, I don't know what the relationship is. I'm sure it's great with Jeff Lebby. Find it hard to believe he would leave Oklahoma to go to Mississippi State. You?
Actually, no, I think that would make a ton of sense, and for a couple of reasons. Number one, they've got a guy waiting in the wings there at Oklahoma, and Jackson Arnold, that's really good, and I think Dylan Gabriel knows it. I think he's probably close to tapping the top of his head on the ceiling, and a fresh start in the SEC, a great bridge player, like to come in for the first year, implement an offense, have a plug-and-play guy, probably get you a win or two more than maybe you would have had if you didn't have that. That's going to be worth something in name, image, and likeness. So maybe this is not only a fresh start, but it's a name, image, and likeness increase. And it just, the timing of it happens to work out really, really well. If you recall, when Dylan Gabriel originally went into the transfer portal, he was committed to UCLA. Jeff Lebby gets the offensive coordinator job at Oklahoma and says, whoa, no. Hold on a second. He flips and goes to Oklahoma. There's got to be a relationship and a tie in there with this one.
Hey, what is more surprising to you, though, the progression of Jalen Milroe from the beginning of this season to where he is right now, or the regression of Keaton Slovis and from that first year at USC to Pittsburgh to BYU?
Oh, wow. Probably the regression of Keaton Slovis. What an up and down, erratic career that sometimes just head scratching.
Well, you remember this. You might have been on the game. I don't know. I remember I was at a high school reunion, believe it or not, when they played the Holiday Bowl against Iowa, and I was keeping up with it on my phone, and they're winning the game, and then he gets the injury, and he's out, and it seemed like it transformed everything that was going right for him. USC ended up losing that game, and he's never been the same player.
No, he hasn't. I had them twice that year, his freshman year, and then he's never been the same player. They'd never been the same program. He was always battling injury. I didn't have him at Pitt last year, had him at BYU this year against Texas. But it was a long, like slow downhill regression, whereas Jalen Milroe has been, by all accounts, a pretty fast progression of improvement and incremental success that has come with each and every game. We've seen, I thought before he got injured, I thought going back to the 2018 or 2019 Sun Bowl was when I first saw Jordan Travis play quarterback for Florida State, and I was like, oh my God, this guy cannot play quarterback in major college football. I think Jordan Travis is the most improved player in college football since that point, regardless of position. I don't even think it's close.
Wow.
I mean, he completely changed the trajectory of his entire life, his entire career, and what may come after college, and he didn't even look like he could compete at this level at that position. That's been remarkable to me. I think you look at Jaden Daniels, if you go back to his freshman year at Arizona State, and you're like, oh man, this guy's going to be really, really good. And then all he did, you talk about regress. He regressed as a sophomore and a junior. And then I had the spring game when he transferred to LSU. And at that time, they had Miles Brennan, who'd play a lot of football. He just couldn't stay injured. They couldn't stay healthy. Garrett Nussmeier had just arrived. Walker Howard was there. And then Jaden Daniels comes in. And you came off of that spring game. You didn't know who the quarterback was going to be. It wasn't like he walked in and just lit the world on fire. And so he deserves a ton of credit. He might have himself a career for a long time.
So last week after the Iron Bowl, I forgot what the late game was. I can't remember. I think it was a Pac-12 game.
Was it Washington State?
No, that was Friday. It was
Who was it? I watched it too.
Anyway, after that game, we're up late, and a buddy of mine, we were talking about different movies, and the movie Colors came up. He had never seen it in 1988.
With Robert Duvall?
Yeah, Dennis Hopper actually directs it with Robert Duvall and Sean Penn as Pac-Man, the mean cop back before things were caught on video. And I watched it as a kid. I loved it. It was a little cheesier this time. Don Cheadle's got a small role in it. So the cast is pretty good. And it really it tried to capture what was going on in the late 80s in South Central LA between the Bloods and the Crips. And so I thought it was kind of entertaining. It wasn't as good as when I first saw it as a kid. Have you seen it, though?
Oh, I've seen it too. And I came, at that time I was 8th grade, 9th grade, 10th grade, really through high school because at the time my dad was coaching college football in California. And so, he was always recruiting those areas. And sometimes I'd be along for the ride. And you start to go into some of those areas in South Central LA and Torrance and Watts and off Crenshaw Boulevard and some of those areas. And, if you remember, shortly thereafter, Boys in the Hood came out.
Yeah.
Remember that? And it all kind of followed in the path. And then right after that, you had the Rodney King scenario that happened right in the streets of exactly where that movie was documented. So if you think that's a good movie, because it is, and you want to upgrade to one of the most realistic police movies that you'll ever watch, and I'm saying this according to my best friend and the best man at my wedding, who has been retired 23 years as a major police force. Go watch End of Watch with Jake Gyllenhaal and
Michael Pena.
Michael Pena, yes.
Yeah. So here's why I haven't seen it. It's most of it done with a handheld, like 9mm camera. It's kind of shaky.
Some of it, yeah, a lot of it is.
Yeah, see, I get motion sickness. I know I sound like a poon,
serious?
but oh yeah, man. I walked out of Saving Private Ryan. I went back the very next day and sat in the back. That first beach scene, it completely destroyed me. I walked out of, this is gonna get funny. Captain Phillips, the up and down on the boat, it killed me. I Am Legend, Will Smith, when he's running with his dog Samantha.
Can you ride in a car?
I'm fine in a car. Like if I get out on a boat past where I can see the coast, that's a problem. Rides like going upside down, that's a problem. But I found that, so Blair Witch killed me, and I'll never forget. Back when I used to read the old USA Today, which I'm sure you did, my favorite sections were the red sports and then the purple life.
Exactly.
They did something on people's equilibrium that were leaving the theaters for Blair Witch. And so obviously I've got that same thing. It's just an emotion. I don't know, but
you should wear that little patch that they put on the back of your neck before you go to the movies.
Probably
help you stop being such a woo-woo.
I know, it's so pathetic. But yeah.
But anyway, if you can, watch End of Watch and sit at the very opposite end of your house.
Okay. So why is it so authentic?
They, according to my buddy, because my buddy hates cop movies, and he came to me, he's come to me twice in his life. Like he hates Law and Order, he hates all that and this and that. He came to me one time, he goes, "Hey, you're not gonna believe this, but," he goes, "have you watched that show, The Wire?" And I'm like, "I haven't yet." He goes, "Well, you know how I feel about cop movies." He goes, "That movie is my job." And he goes, "And they nailed it."
And The Wire or
The Wire.
Yeah, The Wire is incredible.
So he first came back, he said that to me, and that's when I knew, like, if he says it, he must be legit. He hates all cop movies and cop shows, for that matter. So then he comes back years later, he goes, "Hey, man, you watch this End of Watch?" He goes, that's legit, dude. They have nailed that thing in terms of, like, the tone, what actually is happening, how it's happening, how dangerous the whole thing is, and all this and that. And it's a really good movie. It's one of the better police movies you'll ever watch.
It is really tough in whatever field you're in, because I was a bookmaker in college, and I booked for like 10 years. I really did in Alabama.
Are you serious?
Oh yeah.
Like made a living?
Oh yeah. Well, I mean, I was in school, but I learned after my freshman year, after I lost a bunch of money, I was like,
are you on the arm? I mean, are you connected?
No, but I ran book for a decade in Tuscaloosa, and it was incredible. But every time I watch a movie about a bookie, it is so stereotyped, and they're so far off with lingo and everything. And they've got a new show on HBO called Bookie, and it's a comedy. So Chuck Lorre, Nick Bakay is one of the producers. Chuck Lorre, the guy behind 2.5 Men.
Man, yeah,
he's the executive producer, and it's a cast that I don't even really recognize. but it's just so cheesy with the lingo and stuff. And I mean, it's somewhat
That's how I am
entertaining.
about football movies.
Yeah, I bet that's what I was at. Like, so you were, you've seen the executive positions and coaching and all that. Like, I've never seen the movie Draft Day. Do they even come close on Draft Day with how
actually,
it is?
Draft Day has a couple of moments that are fairly realistic. That some conversations that would be had, and some strain in the draft room on that day, and the preparation for that day, and dealing with agents and all. And there are some things, like there's a conversation in that movie about, I think Kevin Costner's on the phone with a guy they're thinking about taking, and they're like, dude, stay off social media. You're killing yourself. Like those types of things.
Yeah.
It's true, By the way, Mr. Bookie, have you seen the line on the Orange Bowl?
Yeah. And
so here's what's going to happen. The committee's taking all this heat, and somehow, some way, it will all end up working itself out. And they're going to make themselves look good on the Florida State call and horrible on the Georgia call.
Well,
that thing could get out of hand.
Well, the narrative to me is this: if Florida State somehow wins it, everybody's going to say, "Told you so." Florida State should have been in this. Yeah. And the other side, if Georgia blows them out, people are going to say Florida State, they just weren't into this game because they got jilted from the college football playoff.
It's like Oregon having the Group of 5 draw versus Liberty.
Right? How do you know when a team's going to show up for a bowl game, though?
It's hard, man. It's gotten harder and harder and harder. Listen, I was a part of the Peach Bowl when Houston beat Florida State, and you could tell from the moment you walked on the field, Florida State didn't want to be there. UCF beating Auburn in the Peach Bowl, right? Then it wasn't a bowl game. It was one of those opening kickoff games between Houston and Oklahoma. Houston beats Oklahoma on that day. Like that Group of 5 draw is not easy. Like you got to have some. I think you got to have some really, really mature players that really care about winning.
He is ESPN's Tom Luginbill at Spittin Loogs. We do it every single week here on Disrupt the Media. It is brought to you by Lance's Lock, lanceslock.com. Jump on board. We've got a bowl package we'll tell you about, but all leagues, all plays, we do it every single day. We've got daily packages, weekly, monthly, annual packages. Jump on board at lanceslock.com. Great stuff. I know you're going to be busy. When's the first bowl game for you?
I've got an FCS quarterfinal this coming Saturday, South Dakota State and Villanova in Brookings, South Dakota. I got to somehow get from there to Bristol to do our Capital One Bowl reveal show. And then the following week, let's see, that will be the famous Toastery Bowl in Charlotte on Monday, the 18th, and then go to Bristol for signing day for the 20th. And then have I'm not allowed to say. I have a New Year's Six Bowl. I have a New Year's Six Bowl after Christmas.
Okay. Very, very good. Safe travels. We'll do it again next week at some point. We'll figure it out.
Sounds good, buddy. See ya.